Hi guys, how you all doing? Welcome back to another video on the channel. As you can see, I'm sheltering inside the car today. A little bit chilly outside. It was meant to be warm today. I read it was meant to be 14 degrees. Freezing out there. Just in from the Eddie Howe press conference. I thought I'd just sit in the car park outside the training ground and record this for you guys before heading over to, wait for it, Sunderland. Their press conference is this afternoon. Now you can probably see in the headline of my video, we're going to be talking about Sunderland a little bit, but please don't switch off just yet, because I want to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what I've seen at the Stadium of Light so far this season and what to expect come that derby match in December. So I'm hoping this video lands okay. I know it's probably a little bit of a I'm risking the wrath, shall we say, but I was speaking to a couple of people. In fact, I was speaking to my friend and colleague Craig Howe, and I said I'm thinking of doing a little video talking about Sunderland against Newcastle in December. He's like, I dare you, just do it. So I'm doing it. So I'm going to do it. But I've got loads other to talk about. Loads of other things to talk about that came out of today's news conference. A couple of really good news lines as well. So hopefully we'll keep it pacey and get through everything. But before we get into all that video, I want to give you guys a couple of stats if you don't know them already. Newcastle play West Ham, as we know, on Sunday. Newcastle have won at the London Stadium more recently than West Ham United have. Now, I just said that so much better than what I tried to say in the press conference this morning. Got my words jumbled up with my question to Eddie. I'd just come off the back of a long sit down with him, and my head was a bit fried. I saw a text message come in on my phone as I was trying to come up with that question. Lost my train of thought. I made an absolute idiot of myself. So if you listen to the press conference, you'll probably hear that. So yeah, just remind yourself, you need to keep your eye on the ball. It can sometimes happen to you. But yeah, some stat that, of course, remember Newcastle won there back in March, 10th of March, the Monday Night Football, 6 days before the Carabao Cup final, after a couple of sticky results. And it took you guys into the cup final against Liverpool with a spring in your step, with a good feeling. Eddie said that's one of his most important wins as a manager, because it really just set the team up nicely for the cup final against Liverpool at Wembley less than a week later. So that was back on 10th of March. West Ham have yet to win at home since that time. And since that date, incredible. They won the game before that. They've had 7 games at home in the Premier League since then, have failed to win any of those. So Newcastle have won at the London Stadium more recently than West Ham have, and that game seems an absolute eternity ago. So there's stat number 1. Stat number 2, you go up against Callum Wilson this weekend. I asked Eddie a little bit about this off camera before the press conference this morning, and he said he's pretty sure he's never come up against Callum Wilson before in his career. Of course, he had him at Bournemouth for a number of years, and then at Newcastle for 4 years. So the vast majority of Callum Wilson's career has been under Eddie Howe. But there's been spells between the two clubs, and then before he signed them, that Callum Wilson's played for other clubs, played for Coventry, played for Newcastle here before Eddie arrived. I'd need to go through all his clubs, I don't know if there's any more. But Eddie's never come up against Callum Wilson. This will be the first time at the ripe old age of, 33 I think Callum is, that he will have faced Eddie Howe in the opposing dugout. So that's pretty interesting. And also, Callum Wilson has never scored against his former team. I think it's something like 247 games since scoring against his former team. He holds the record. So that's pretty interesting. I hope I've not jinxed it ahead of Sunday. He was asked today, Eddie, how he would feel about Callum Wilson scoring a consolation in a 3 or 4-1 win, and he said no, not having it. Doesn't even want him scoring a consolation, but of course talked about his love for him. But listen, you're not watching this video to hear about that. You're watching this video to hear about Sunderland and the Stadium of Light and that derby match in December in 6 weeks' time. That's why I thought I would talk about it. As you can see in my headline, the Stadium of Fright, it's Halloween today. I thought it all added up to talk a little bit about this game. Now, I've been to the Stadium of Light a few times this season, and I have to say, I'm not surprised where Sunderland are in the league table. Now, I am surprised they beat Chelsea away last weekend. I thought that was a stick-on home win. So much so I captained Pedro Neto. I sold Mickey van de Ven, who got 26 points, and bought Reece James, who got 1 point. So that was a horrendous mistake. And I did think Chelsea would win that game. But the games I've seen at the Stadium of Light, I have to say I've been very impressed with the change in mood around the place. It reminds me a lot of the early days under Eddie Howe here, when Newcastle being in a sticky spell at home, hadn't been winning games. The fans were kind of against the owners, as we all know, and then Eddie came in and almost made the stadium, he made St James's Park like a real fortress straight away. Like after a few, we all remember the Cambridge defeat, and there was a couple of other ones, the Norwich draw, but then he suddenly made it this fortress and built over time, and it feels very much like that's what's being created at the Stadium of Light at the moment. You go there, every game's an occasion, the players are up for it, the fans are up for it. It's a difficult game, it's a difficult team to play. They're a big, physical, imposing side, like right across the back, real physical players. Dan Ballard, Mukiele, Alderete, then Siddiqui covers the ground in midfield. I have to say, and you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but the recruitment has been very, very good. Now that game, remember, comes 3 days after you guys return from Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League. Hopefully you've got another 3 points on the board, or 6 points on the board by then. Away to Marseille, which comes hot on the heels of the home match against Athletic Bilbao. So you'll be pretty much, if you get 6 points there, or at least 4, you're pretty much qualified anyway. So the Leverkusen game might not be huge, but I just think it's a real tough game to come back from, away from home in Germany, Champions League, to come straight back into a derby. Yes, you'll be up for it, the fans will be up for it, but it's just a really, really difficult time to play them. They'll have had the whole week to prepare. And then there's this talk about, oh yeah, but they're going to be losing a lot of their players to the African Cup of Nations. My understanding is, from what I'm told, that their players, the 7 of them that are going to the AFCON, will travel out on the Monday after the derby match, so they are likely to have a full squad to choose from, give or take any injury situation. So, but look, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, manage your expectations. Yes, you want to win that game. But if you're asking me this question right now, and I get people coming up to me and asking a lot about it, both Newcastle and Sunderland fans, I think a draw would not be the worst result. I don't think many teams are going to go there this season with the momentum they've got and the atmosphere there. I don't think many teams are going to go there and win. Like St James's Park is such a difficult place to go. I knew before that Spurs game midweek, like, yes, they had a strong team out, they only made 4 changes. I just knew they wouldn't fancy it. They'd lost the last 3 there, one of them by 6-1, one of them by 4-0. I just knew it was going to be a really, really difficult game for Spurs, and I thought it was really, really good odds. Newcastle, where they were, I think, were 5-6 or evens to win the game. You just sense it, and I just feel Sunderland are going to be one of these teams who are going to pick up a lot of points at home this season. I was surprised by the Chelsea win away from home, but I think at home it's going to be tough for teams. So look, roll your sleeves up. I know it's 6 weeks away. I know you'll be looking forward to the game. It's great to have the derbies back. That's going to be a really, really hard fixture in the back of that Leverkusen game. And it'll be really interesting to see, what Newcastle turn up. Yes, it's an away game. However, it's only 20 minutes down the road, isn't it? So, look, I'm really looking forward to that already. I think it's going to be a real powder keg. It certainly won't be like the cup game a couple of years ago when you absolutely steamrollered them. They're a completely different team with the likes of Granit Xhaka in there and that sort of leadership. I think it's going to be an amazing spectacle. I really do. And I'm looking forward to it, even though it's in 6 weeks' time. But anyway, that's enough about Sunderland on the Newcastle channel. I've kind of wanted to talk about that. I know you guys have probably looked a little bit into their signings and what they've done, but just from having seen them a couple of times, I think it's going to be tough. And I just think that game there'll be very little to split the teams. If the match is at St James's Park, of course I fancy Newcastle. I just think at home Sunderland are a different prospect and will be this season. As I say, I don't think many teams will beat them there this season. I think they'll beat Everton on Monday night. I think they might take a couple of 3 or 4-0 hammer-ins along the line, but I think they'll certainly win more than they lose. But anyway, I've risked the wrath. I hope you're still watching. We're 9 minutes in. You're probably not. Couple of updates. Johan Wissa, Eddie Howe this morning asked, will he be available for West Ham on Sunday? No, absolutely no chance. And he said, I'm not trying to be evasive, but I don't know when he'll be part of the group. I don't know when. Of course, the kind of feeling was that it was likely to be next week against Bilbao or Brentford. If you're asking me, I would be surprised if he's involved in either of those games, and I think they'll wait until after the international break. And let's be honest, things are going fairly well at the moment with Nick Voltemada. He's playing a lot of games. He started again in midweek. He'll start again on Sunday. That's taking the pressure off the Wissa situation, and the fact Will Asula's popped up with a couple of goal involvements as well. But it just sounds to me and feels to me that one's going to kind of get, Can's going to kick down the road. It's going to get dragged out a little bit towards the start of AFCON, and Newcastle will try and keep him here rather than allow him go to AFCON to recover and integrate him back into the team. That's the kind of information that I'm hearing, and they'll kind of make a little bit of a plea to Congo and say, look guys, this is the best thing for the player moving forward and for your World Cup hopes, because they could still get to the World Cup next year, and Wissa could play a part in not just qualifying but actually being involved at the World Cup as well. So let's see what happens, but I think this kind of elongated process to me lends itself to a question being put to Congo as to, can we keep Yoane Wissa through the AFCON to try and integrate him back into the Newcastle team. And the word I'm told, and I've said this in previous videos, is, and this is from people close to the player, is that he wants to prioritise Newcastle because he feels Newcastle was so patient waiting for him in the summer, and I think he probably feels a little bit bad that he's got himself injured on international duty. Other thing I wanted to say, Malik Chow was asked a few questions of Malik Chow today. Eddie Howe, he said he tried to sign him a number of times on multiple occasions before he finally got done in the summer. Finally, everything aligned this summer and he managed to get it done, but it's taken a while. It sounds like he's been at it for a couple of years, but they finally got their man. And he said, look, it's been worth the wait, and he does. He looks an absolute Rolls Royce. I spoke about him a lot in my video after the midweek win against Spurs in the Cup, but what a player he looks. And for me, moving forward, the prospect of him and Sven Botman at centre-half is a really, really good one. I actually spoke to Dan Burn last Friday and hear about it, and he said, look, I'm happy to play left back, because if these two are going to be the future of Newcastle, let's get them in there and play together, and I'm happy to step aside to left back to allow them to play, which I thought says everything about Dan Burn. But just seeing Botman looking close to his best, back and close to his best, and Chow just looking so comfortable, like oozing class, playing the ball out from the back, big, imposing. I just think the two of them together could be a really, really good partnership moving forward, providing both of them, of course, can stay fit. In terms of selection for the weekend, I think Eddie's got a couple of decisions to make. Of course, Nick Pope will come back and play in goals. I do think it will be Bruno, Tonali and Joe Linton. Tonali was supreme the other night. He looked 100% back and recovered. I don't know, I think Ramsey's going to be sniffing around. I really like the look of Jacob Ramsey. While he might not start on Sunday, I wouldn't be surprised at some stage Joe Linton's position comes under real threat from Ramsey, because he looks the real deal. I like the way he moves, I like the way he supports the attack. He's good off both feet. He's a really physical. I thought he was going to be a lot smaller than that, but he looks like a real physical specimen, and he looks like someone who could go on and succeed Joe Linton. But I think Joe Linton probably will start at the weekend. I think Murphy comes back in and starts again wide right, having been rested in midweek. Of course, the similar situation with Gordon on the left. Out come Barnes, out comes Elanga. And the other decision would be at centre-back. Fabian Schär did great the other night, clean sheet, scored the opening goal, looked really good. I think Eddie's just said in his press conference it's one of his best performances for the club, like he was that good. But I just think if Botman's available, I think he goes back to Botman and Chow and tries to allow those two to grow together. But and then of course Trippier comes back in at right back and Dan Burn continues at left back. That would be my thinking regarding the team. But the good thing is choices to make, and what position Eddie's in at the moment, that he can have a really, really strong bench. He can make all those changes for a cup tie the other night and still bring on the likes of Gordon and Bruno to try to see out, and Joe Linton to try and see out the game. It must be a really nice position to be in at the moment, and so different to the position we saw the club in 2 years ago in the Champions League. So touch wood, that continues, and that he's got a strong squad for all these upcoming games, and he's able to juggle all these competitions, because it feels like there's a momentum building at the moment, and it must be a nice sort of place to be involved with at the moment. So that's it from me, guys. That's my thoughts on the game on Sunday. That's my thoughts on what Eddie said this morning. That's my thoughts on Sunderland. Hope I've not put too many of you off. But I thought I would just kind of touch on it with the game upcoming, and a lot of people asking me about it. A lot of people, both Newcastle and Sunderland fans, asking me about it. So if it's not what you wanted to hear, don't be scared. Leave your thoughts below. Cheers, guys. Speak to the next one.